The metal corridor echoed with the sound of Taeyang's boots. He wiped sweat from his forehead and looked at the repaired panel one more time. The wiring looked good now. It had taken him 3 hours to fix the damaged power relay, but the job was finally done. Taeyang Kim was 28 years old and worked as an engineer on Nexus Station. The station floated in space between many different worlds. Aliens from dozens of species came here to talk, trade, and make peace. Taeyang's job was simple: fix things when they broke. He liked it that way. No politics, no complicated meetings, just problems he could solve with his hands and his tools. He packed his equipment into his bag and started walking back toward the human quarters. This corridor was supposed to be empty. It was in a restricted area where only maintenance workers could go. That's why Taeyang stopped walking when he heard a sound. Someone was crying. Taeyang turned a corner and saw a small figure sitting against the wall. It was a child, but not a human child. The boy had pale blue skin and large dark eyes that reflected the corridor lights. His clothes were fine and expensive looking, nothing like the simple uniforms workers wore. This child belonged to someone important. The boy looked up at Taeyang and made a sound. It wasn't words Taeyang could understand. The child's species used a different language. But fear was easy to recognize in any language. The boy was lost and scared. Taeyang should have called security. That was the proper thing to do. But the child looked so small and frightened that Taeyang couldn't just walk away. He knelt down slowly, trying not to scare the boy more. "Hey," Taeyang said softly. "It's okay. Are you lost?" The boy stared at him. Of course he didn't understand. Taeyang pulled out his datapad and activated the translation program. It wasn't perfect, but it might help. He selected the Valoran language. He recognized the boy's features now. Velorans were a powerful warrior race. They controlled huge sections of space. Humans stayed away from them mostly. Velorans thought humans were weak. "Lost?" Taeyang said into the datapad. The device made sounds in the Veloran language. The boy's eyes went wide. He nodded quickly and said something back. The datapad translated, "Cannot find guards. Mother will be angry." "I'll help you find them," Taeyang said. "What's your name?" "Iroh," the boy replied through the translation. "I'm Taeyang. Come on, let's get you back to the diplomatic section." Iroh stood up and took Taeyang's hand without fear. The simple trust surprised Taeyang. He had heard that Velorans didn't trust easily, especially not humans. But Iroh held his hand tight as they walked through the corridors. Taeyang knew the station well after working here for 2 years. He led Iroh through the maze of hallways toward the diplomatic quarters. Along the way, Iroh started talking more. Through the datapad, Taeyang learned that Iroh was 7 years old. He had wandered away from his guards because he wanted to see the station's engine room. His mother had told him stories about engines and ships, and Iroh wanted to see one up close. "I like engines too," Taeyang said, smiling. "That's my job. I fix them." Iroh's face lit up with excitement. He asked a dozen questions about how the station worked, how the gravity systems functioned, how ships flew through space. Taeyang answered as best he could, keeping his explanations simple. The boy was smart. He understood quickly. They reached the diplomatic sector after 20 minutes of walking. 2 tall Veloran guards stood at the entrance, and they looked angry. When they saw Iroh, they rushed forward, shouting in their language. The datapad couldn't keep up with the rapid words Iroh shouted back, pointing at Taeyang. The guards looked at the human with suspicious eyes. One of them moved his hand toward the weapon on his belt. Taeyang raised his hand slowly, showing he meant no harm. "I found him in the maintenance corridor," Taeyang explained. "He was lost. I just wanted to help him get back safely." The guard's translation device blinked as it processed his words. The guards looked at each other, then at Iroh. The boy spoke quickly, gesturing with his hands. Whatever he said seemed to calm the guards down. One of them nodded at Taeyang. It wasn't friendly exactly, but it wasn't hostile either. Iroh pulled away from the guards and ran back to Taeyang. He grabbed the human's hand with both of his small blue hands. Iroh looked up at him with those large dark eyes and spoke clearly and slowly, making sure the translation device would catch every word. "You're the one my mother wants to see, human." Taeyang blinked in confusion. "What? I don't understand." But the guards were already pulling Iroh away gently. The boy waved at Taeyang as he disappeared through the doors into the diplomatic section. The guards followed quickly, and the doors sealed shut with a heavy sound. Taeyang stood alone in the corridor, completely confused. What did that mean? Why would a Velaran leader want to see him? He had never met any Velaran before today. He was just an engineer who fixed broken things. He walked back to the human quarters slowly, his mind spinning with questions. When he arrived, his supervisor Minho Park was waiting for him. Minho was a short man with gray hair and a permanent worried expression. "Where have you been?" Minho asked. "You were supposed to finish that repair an hour ago." "I did finish it," Taeyang said. "But then I found a lost child and helped him get back to the diplomatic sector." Minho's face went pale. "You went to the diplomatic sector?" "Taeyang, we're not supposed to go there. That's for ambassadors and important people, not engineers. A child was lost. What was I supposed to do?" "You were supposed to call security and let them handle it." Minho ran his hand through his hair, looking stressed. "Listen, just stay away from that area from now on. The Valorans are here for important meetings. We don't want to cause any problems." "I didn't cause any problems. I just helped a kid." "Let's hope you're right," Minho said. "Now go get some rest. You look tired." That night, Taeyang lay in his small quarters, staring at the ceiling. He couldn't stop thinking about Iroh's words. "You're the one my mother wants to see." It made no sense. He was nobody special, just an engineer who fixed power relays and navigation systems. He told himself to forget about it. Tomorrow he would have new repairs to do. Life would go back to normal. But deep down, Taeyang had a strange feeling that nothing would be normal again. Something had changed, and he didn't know what it was yet. Outside his window, alien ships docked and undocked from the station. Lights blinked in the darkness of space. Somewhere on this station, a Valoran child was telling his mother about the human who had helped him. And somewhere, decisions were being made that would change Taeyang's life forever. But for now, he just needed to sleep. 3 days passed since Taeyang met Iroh. He tried to focus on his work, but the boy's words kept coming back to him. "You're the one my mother wants to see." Every time he thought about it, more questions filled his mind. Taeyang was fixing a ventilation system when his datapad beeped. He pulled it out and saw a message from the station's central administration. His heart beat faster as he read it. The message was formal and cold. "Engineer Taeyang Kim is requested to appear at the Valoran Diplomatic Suite at 1400 hours today. Attendance is mandatory." His hands shook slightly. This was real. The Velarans actually wanted to see him. Taeyang called Minho immediately. His supervisor answered after 2 rings, and his face on the screen looked worried. "Did you get a summons?" Minho asked before Taeyang could say anything. "Yes, what does this mean?" "It means you're in trouble. Or they want something from you. With Velarans, it's hard to tell which is worse." Minho rubbed his face tiredly. "I contacted Jusu Choi from the diplomatic department. She's coming to brief you. Don't go to that meeting without talking to her first." An hour later, Taeyang sat in a small conference room with Jisoo and his best friend Hyun Lee. Jisoo was a woman in her 40s who had worked with alien species for 20 years. She had seen everything. Hyun was another engineer, tall and always joking around. But he wasn't joking now. He looked as worried as Taeyang felt. "Let me explain what you're walking into," Jisoo said, opening a file on her datapad. "The Valorans are one of the most powerful warrior races in known space. They value strength, honor, and loyalty above everything. They control 5 great fleets, and each fleet is commanded by a matriarch." "What's a matriarch?" Taeyang asked. "A female leader," Jisoo explained. "Velaran society is led by women. The males are warriors and workers, but women make all the important decisions. The matriarch who summoned you is named Vela. She commands the 3rd Fleet, which has over 500 warships." Hyun whistled quietly. "That's a lot of firepower." "Yes, and she wants to talk to you." Jisoo looked at Taeyang seriously. "Do you have any idea why?" Taeyang told them about finding Iroh in the corridor. He explained how he had helped the boy get back to the diplomatic sector. Jisoo listened carefully, making notes on her datapad. "That explains part of it," she said. "Iroh is Matriarch Vela's son, but helping a lost child shouldn't require a formal meeting. There's something else going on here. Can I refuse to go?" Taeyang asked. "Technically, yes, but it would be a terrible insult. Velarans take these things very seriously. If you refuse, it could damage relations between humans and Velarans. And trust me, we don't want them as enemies. So I have to go. I recommend it strongly." Jisoo handed him a small device. "This is a better translator than the one you have. It will help. I've also loaded it with information about Valoran customs. Read it on your way there." "I'm going with you," Hyun said suddenly. "You don't have to," Taeyang replied. I know, but you're my friend. And you look terrified. Yun smiled a little. Besides, someone needs to tell everyone what happened if the Valorans decide to eat you. They don't eat people, Jisoo said. But she didn't sound completely sure. At exactly 1400 hours, Taeyang and Hyun stood outside the Valoran diplomatic suite. The doors were huge and made of dark metal. 2 guards stood on either side, each over 7 feet tall and covered in armor. They looked at the 2 humans with cold eyes. Taeyang showed them his datapad with the summons. One guard nodded and spoke into a communication device. A moment later, the doors opened slowly. What Taeyang saw inside made his breath catch in his throat. The room was massive. The walls were covered with weapons, swords, axes, spears, all arranged in beautiful patterns. Banners hung from the ceiling, each showing different symbols. But what really caught Taeyang's attention were the Valorans. There must have been 30 or 40 of them in the room. Most wore ceremonial armor that gleamed under the lights. They stood in rows on either side of a long walkway, and every single one of them turned to look at Taeyang when he entered. "Oh no," Hyun whispered beside him. "This is way more formal than I expected." A Valoran in dark robes approached them. He was older, with scars on his face and hands. "Engineer Taeyang Kim?" he asked in perfect galactic common. "Yes, that's me. The matriarch will see you now. Your companion must wait here." Hyun squeezed Taeyang's shoulder. "Good luck." Taeyang walked down the long walkway alone. His boots made soft sounds on the polished floor. The Valoran warriors watched him silently. Their faces showed no emotion, but Taeyang could feel them judging him, measuring him. At the end of the walkway was a raised platform. A large chair sat on the platform, and in that chair was a Valoran woman. She was tall and strong-looking, with the same pale blue skin as Iroh. But where Iroh had looked soft and young, this woman looked hard and powerful. She wore armor decorated with gold patterns. Her dark eyes watched Taeyang approach with sharp intelligence. This was Matriarch Vela. Standing beside her chair was Iroh. The boy's face broke into a huge smile when he saw Taeyang. He waved excitedly until his mother put a hand on his shoulder, reminding him to behave formally. Taeyang reached the platform and wasn't sure what to do. Should he bow? Kneel? Jisoo's briefing had covered some customs, but his mind went blank. So he just stood there and waited. Matriarch Vela studied him for a long moment. Then she spoke in the Valoran language. Taeyang's translator device worked quickly, turning her words into galactic common. "You are the human who found my son." "Yes, Matriarch. He was lost, so I helped him get back here safely." "Why?" The question confused Taeyang. "Why? Because he needed help." He was scared. "You are human. My son is Valoran. Our peoples have no alliance, no friendship. Why did you help him?" Taeyang thought about the question. It seemed strange to him, because it was the right thing to do. He's a child. Children shouldn't be left alone when they're scared. Several Valorans in the room made sounds of surprise. Matriarch Vela leaned forward in her chair, looking at Taeyang with new interest. "Most humans fear us," she said. "Yet you showed no fear with my son. You held his hand, answered his questions, treated him with kindness. I didn't know he was your son at the time. I just knew he was a kid who needed help." Bella stood up from her chair. She was very tall, at least a foot taller than Taeyang. She walked down from the platform until she stood directly in front of him. Taeyang had to look up to meet her eyes. "Engineer Taeyang Kim," she said slowly. "There is something you do not know. Something I must tell you. 3 days ago, when my son thanked you, he spoke true words. You are indeed the one I have wanted to see. But not because you helped him in a corridor. I have been searching for you for 6 months. Taeyang's confusion must have shown on his face because Vela continued. "I have a story to tell you, human. A story about war and pirates and a merchant ship caught in the crossfire. A story about 2 Valoran children trapped and dying. And a story about a human engineer who stayed behind when everyone else evacuated. A human who saved those children's lives." Suddenly, Taeyang understood. His mind flashed back to 6 months ago, when his transport ship had been attacked near the Kepler system. The explosions, the panic, the damaged life support systems. He remembered working frantically to keep the ship's systems running while rescue came. But he didn't remember saving any Valoran children. Everything had been chaos and emergency. He just did what needed to be done. "You," Matriarch Vela said quietly, "saved my daughter's life. And now I have finally found you." Taeyang stood frozen as Matriarch Vela's words sank in. His mind raced back to that terrible day 6 months ago. The memory had faded into just another bad experience, something to forget. But now it came rushing back with perfect clarity. I don't understand, Taeyang said slowly. That attack happened so fast. Everything was confusion. I just tried to keep people alive until help came. Sit, Vela commanded, gesturing to a bench that was brought forward by one of her warriors. I will tell you what happened from my perspective. Then perhaps you will understand, Taeyang sat down. Iroh came and sat beside him, looking up at the human with admiring eyes. Vela began to pace as she spoke, her voice filling the great hall. 6 months ago, my fleet was patrolling the border regions near Kepler 442. We received distress calls from multiple ships. Pirates had organized a coordinated attack on several trade routes. These were not ordinary pirates. They were well armed and organized. Vela's expression grew dark with anger as she remembered. We engaged them immediately. Valoran warriors do not allow innocent ships to be attacked in our territory. The battle was fierce. We destroyed 3 pirate vessels quickly, but 2 escaped into an asteroid field. They were clever. They took hostages from the merchant ships they had damaged, thinking we would not follow. Taeyang listened carefully. He remembered the explosions outside his ship's windows, the way the whole vessel had shaken with each impact. One of those damaged merchant ships was carrying you, Vela continued. It was called the Golden Wing, a human vessel transporting passengers and cargo to the outer stations. The pirates had hit it with electromagnetic pulse weapons. Your ship was crippled, floating dead in space. I remember, Taeyang said quietly. All the main systems failed. We had maybe 30 minutes of life support left. My warriors boarded several ships to evacuate survivors, but we are warriors, not rescue specialists. We fight, we conquer, we protect. But delicate work? Damaged systems? These things are not our strength. Vela stopped pacing and looked directly at Taeyang. On your ship there was a problem. The life support, Taeyang said, remembering now. Yes, the electromagnetic pulse had damaged it badly. My warriors found people trapped in a sealed cargo section. The doors would not open and the air was running out. Among those trapped were 2 Valoran children who had been separated from their guardian unit during the battle. Iroh spoke up suddenly. My sister Mina was one of them. She was only 5 years old. Taeyang looked at the boy in surprise. He hadn't known any names that day, just scared faces and dying systems. Vela continued her story. My warriors tried to break through the doors. They used their strength, their tools, even their weapons, but the doors were safety sealed. Breaking them wrong could have killed everyone inside. They needed someone who understood human engineering systems. The evacuation shuttles were leaving, Taeyang said, the memory becoming clearer. Everyone was supposed to get off the ship, but the captain asked if any engineers could help. Most people had already evacuated. I was one of the last ones still on board. You chose to stay, Vela said simply. It wasn't really a choice. People were dying. Someone had to help, but you could have left. You could have been safe. Instead, you went into a damaged, dying ship to save strangers. Taeyang shook his head. I just did what needed to be done. I bypassed the safety locks and rerouted power from the emergency batteries. It took maybe 15 minutes. 15 minutes while the ship could have exploded at any moment, Vela said. 15 minutes during which you worked in a sealed section with limited air. My warriors told me you looked calm, focused, like death did not frighten you. I was terrified, Taeyang admitted, but being scared doesn't help fix broken things. I learned that early in my training. Vela smiled slightly. It was the first time Taeyang had seen her smile. You saved 17 people that day. Among them were my daughter Mina and another Valoran child named Kato. When you got the doors open, you helped them all get to the evacuation shuttle. Then only then did you leave yourself. I was the last one out, Taeyang remembered. The ship's reactor failed about 2 minutes after I got on the shuttle. If we had taken any longer, you would have died, Vela finished. All of you would have died. But you succeeded. My warriors brought my daughter back to me alive because a human engineer chose to risk his life for children he did not know. The hall was completely silent. Every Valoran in the room was listening to the story. Many of them looked at Taeyang with new respect in their eyes. In Valoran culture, Vela explained, there is a concept we call the life bond. When someone saves a life, especially the life of a child, it creates a debt that must be honored. This is not a small thing. This is sacred to us. Taeyang felt uncomfortable with all the attention. I really didn't think about it that way. I just helped people who needed help. That is precisely why you are worthy of honor, Vela said. You did not help them for reward or recognition. You helped them because it was right. This is rare in the galaxy. Most species help their own kind and ignore others. But humans, you humans are strange. You help everyone. One of the Velaran warriors spoke up from the side of the room. He was older, with many scars on his face. Matriarch, if I may speak. Vela nodded permission. I was one of the warriors on that rescue mission, the scarred warrior said. I saw this human work. He did not hesitate. He did not ask for help or promise of reward. He simply went into the damaged section and fixed what was broken. When I carried little Mina out, she was crying but alive. This human gave me back the child I thought I had failed to save. The warrior stepped forward and bowed deeply to Taeyang. I am Torin. I owe you a debt I can never repay. Taeyang stood up quickly. Please don't bow. I'm just an engineer. You don't owe me anything. But I do, Torin said. We all do. Around the hall, other Valorans began to murmur agreement. Taeyang felt overwhelmed. This was too much. He didn't want to be treated like a hero. He just wanted to go back to fixing things. Iro tugged on Taeyang's sleeve. That's why Mother has been searching for you. She wanted to thank you properly. But you disappeared. The ship's records were damaged and many passengers scattered to different stations. It took months to find your name and location. And now I have found you, Vela said. Which brings me to why I summoned you here today. In our culture, a life bond must be honored. I wish to repay the debt my family owes you. You don't need to repay anything, Taeyang protested. I do. It is a matter of honor. Vela clasped her hands behind her back, standing tall and formal. I offer you a position as my fleet's human advisor. You would help us understand your species better. Many conflicts in the galaxy come from misunderstanding. You would be a bridge between our peoples. Taeyang was stunned. Matriarch, I appreciate the offer, but I'm just an engineer. I fix broken equipment. I don't know anything about politics or being an advisor. You know about solving problems, Vela countered. You know about staying calm when others panic. You know about sacrifice and duty. These are the qualities I need. I have responsibilities here on the station, Taeyang said. My work is important to me. The hall went silent again. Several Velarans looked shocked. Apparently, refusing a matriarch was not something that happened often. But Vela did not look angry. Instead, she looked thoughtful. She studied Taeyang for a long moment. You refuse my offer? She asked. I don't mean any disrespect, Taeyang said carefully. But I need to think about this. It's a big decision. And honestly, I'm not sure I'm the right person for that kind of job. To everyone's surprise, Vela laughed. It was a deep, genuine laugh that echoed through the hall. You refuse a matriarch's offer because you want to think about it, because you are not sure you are qualified. She shook her head with amusement. You humans are truly strange. Any other species would have accepted immediately whether qualified or not. I believe in being honest, Taeyang said. Yes, I can see that. Vela thought for a moment. Very well. I will modify my offer. You may keep your position here on the station. But you will also serve as a cultural liaison. You will teach selected members of my delegation about human thinking and culture, starting with my son who has not stopped talking about you since you helped him. Iro grinned widely and nodded. That seemed more reasonable to Taeyang. I could do that. Teaching a few people wouldn't interfere with my regular work. Then we have an agreement. Vela extended her hand in the human custom of shaking. Taeyang took it and her grip was strong but not crushing. As Taeyang turned to leave, Toran the warrior approached him again. The scarred Valoran spoke quietly, his voice serious. There are some in our delegation who do not approve of the matriarch's interest in humans. They believe we should keep to ourselves. Be careful, Engineer Taeyang Kim. Not everyone will be happy about this arrangement. Taeyang nodded slowly, understanding the warning. He had just stepped into something much bigger and more complicated than he had realized. 2 weeks had passed since Taeyang's meeting with Matriarch Vela. His life had changed in ways he never expected. He still worked as an engineer during the day, fixing systems and solving technical problems. But 3 times a week he went to the Velaran diplomatic suite to teach. His students were unusual. Iro came to every session, always eager and full of questions. Sometimes other young Velarans joined them. Occasionally, adult warriors would sit quietly in the back, listening but rarely speaking. Taiyang taught them about human history, culture, and ways of thinking. He tried to explain why humans acted the way they did. It was harder than he expected. The Valorans thought very differently from humans. They valued strength and honor above everything. Concepts like compromise or negotiation seemed weak to them. But they listened, and slowly, Taeyang felt they were beginning to understand. Iroh became especially attached to him. The boy would wait for Taeyang outside the engineering section, eager to walk with him and talk about everything. Iroh asked about Earth, about human families, about why humans liked music and art. Taeyang found himself enjoying these conversations. Iroh reminded him of his younger cousins back on Earth, but not everyone was happy about the arrangement. Taeyang noticed certain Valorans watching him with cold eyes. One in particular stood out, a warrior named Doran. He was tall even for a Valoran, with dark scars across his face and a permanent scowl. Doran commanded part of Vela's security forces. Whenever Taeyang passed him in the corridors, Doran would stare with obvious dislike. One afternoon, Hyun pulled Taeyang aside after work. They went to a quiet corner of the station's recreation area, where humans gathered to relax. "I've been hearing things," Hyun said quietly. "Some of the other workers are talking. They say some Valorans are angry about you teaching their people." "I know," Taeyang replied. "I've noticed Doran and his friends watching me." "It's more than just watching. A friend of mine in security said there have been complaints filed. Official ones. Some Valorans think the matriarch is making a mistake by getting close to humans." "What does Vela say about it?" "Apparently she dismissed the complaints. But Taeyang, you need to be careful. These aren't just disagreements. Some of these warriors really hate the idea of Valorans and humans working together." Before Taeyang could respond, his datapad beeped. It was a message from Jisoo, the human diplomat. The message was marked urgent. "Come to my office immediately. Important news." Taeyang and Hyun exchanged worried looks. They hurried to the diplomatic section of the human quarters. Jisoo's office was small but organized. She looked up when they entered, and her face was tense. "Close the door," she said. After they sat down, Jisoo pulled up a file on her main screen. It showed news reports from various stations and planets across known space. "There's been a development," Jisoo began. "The matriarch's decision to work with you has attracted attention. Other species are watching. Some are interested, but others are worried." "Worried about what?" Taeyang asked. "About humans and Valorans forming an alliance. The Valorans are one of the most powerful military forces in the galaxy. If they start cooperating closely with humans, it shifts the balance of power. But I'm just teaching a few people about human culture. That's not an alliance. To outside observers, it looks like the beginning of one, and some species don't want that to happen." Jisoo switched to another file. "I've been monitoring communications. There's increased chatter among the Talvex delegation. They've been meeting privately with members of several other species." "The Talvex are Valoran rivals, right?" Hyun asked. "Yes. They control territory on the opposite side of Valoran space. There's been tension between them for decades. If Valorans get closer to humans, the Talvex lose some of their negotiating power." Taeyang felt a headache forming. "This is too political for me. I just wanted to help a lost kid. I know, but you're involved now whether you like it or not." Jisoo looked at him seriously. "I'm not saying you should stop. The work you're doing is actually valuable. But you need to understand the bigger picture. Every action has consequences." Over the next few days, Taeyang tried to continue his routine normally. He fixed broken systems, taught his classes, and spent time with Iroh. But he could feel tension growing on the station. Human workers reported more hostile encounters with certain alien species. Nothing violent, just cold looks and unfriendly attitudes. Some aliens who had been friendly before now avoided humans. The atmosphere was changing. Then came the afternoon when everything went wrong. Taeyang was teaching Iroh and 3 other young Valorans about human problem-solving methods. He was explaining how humans often found creative solutions by thinking about problems in new ways. The students were engaged, asking good questions. Then Doran entered the room. The warrior didn't knock. He simply walked in, followed by 2 other armed Valorans. The class immediately went silent. Iroh stood up, looking worried. "Commander Doran," Iroh said formally, "we are in the middle of a lesson." "This lesson is over," Doran said coldly. His eyes fixed on Taeyang. "The human needs to come with me. Why?" Taeyang asked, standing up slowly. His heart was beating fast, but he tried to stay calm. There has been an incident. You will answer questions. What kind of incident? Doran's expression was hard. An explosion in the diplomatic sector. Several delegates were injured, and evidence suggests it was caused by humans. Taeyang felt his blood run cold. I've been here teaching for the past 2 hours. These students can confirm that. Nevertheless, you will come with me for questioning. Before Doran could move forward, another voice spoke from the doorway. Commander Doran, you will wait. It was Matriarch Vela. She entered the room with Toran and several other warriors behind her. Vela looked calm, but there was steel in her voice. Matriarch, Doran said, bowing slightly. I was simply following protocol. Protocol requires you to request my permission before questioning someone under my protection. Engineer Taeyang is a member of my delegation. You do not have authority to take him anywhere. Doran's jaw tightened. With respect, Matriarch, this concerns station security. An explosion occurred. Humans are suspected. Suspected by whom? Vela asked sharply. By multiple witnesses. The explosive signature matches human technology. Taeyang spoke up. I know about explosives. If you let me examine the site, I might be able to tell you more about what really happened. Doran looked at him with suspicion. Why would I let a suspect examine evidence? Because I'm not a suspect. I'm an engineer. And if this really was an explosion, there will be technical details that can tell us what caused it. Vela considered this. Commander Doran, I am ordering you to allow Engineer Taeyang to examine the explosion site. Toran will accompany him. If evidence is found that humans were involved, appropriate action will be taken. But we will not make accusations without proof. Doran clearly didn't like this decision, but he couldn't refuse a direct order from the matriarch. He bowed stiffly. As you command. Taeyang gathered his tools and followed Toran through the station. Hyun appeared from somewhere and insisted on coming too. They made their way to the diplomatic sector, where security teams from multiple species were examining the damaged area. The explosion had occurred in a meeting room used by various delegations. The walls were scorched and furniture was overturned. Fortunately, no one had been killed, but several aliens had been injured by the blast. Taeyang pulled on protective gloves and began examining the blast pattern. He took measurements, collected samples of residue, and studied the damage to the surrounding systems. Hyun helped him, taking notes and observations. After an hour of careful work, Taeyang stood up and turned to Toran. This wasn't human technology, Taeyang said quietly. How can you be certain? Several reasons. First, the burn pattern is wrong. Human explosives create a specific type of expansion pattern. This is different. Second, the chemical residue doesn't match any human explosive I know. And third, Taeyang pointed to a damaged power conduit. Whoever set this up tried to make it look like human work, but they made mistakes. This wiring was modified to match human style, but the technique is wrong. No human engineer would wire an explosive like this, so it was made to look like human work, Toran said thoughtfully. Yes, someone wanted people to think humans did this. But who, and why? Taeyang looked at the damaged room. That's a question for someone smarter than me. I just know it wasn't us. Toran put a hand on Taeyang's shoulder. Come, the matriarch needs to hear this. As they walked back through the corridors, Taeyang couldn't shake a growing sense of worry. Someone had tried to frame humans for an attack. Someone wanted to destroy the growing cooperation between humans and Velerans. And Taeyang had a feeling that this was just the beginning of something much worse. Matriarch Vela listened carefully as Taeyang explained his findings about the explosion. They were in a secure conference room with only Toran, Hyun, and Jisoo present. Vela's expression grew darker as Taeyang showed his evidence. You are certain this was designed to look like human work? Vela asked. Yes. Whoever made this device knew enough about human technology to make it look convincing at first glance. But they didn't know the details. An engineer can see the differences. This means someone is trying to turn us against humans, Toran said. Someone wants to destroy the cooperation we have begun building. Jisoo spoke up from her seat. From a diplomatic perspective, this makes sense. Several species have expressed concern about Velerans and humans working together. The Talvex in particular have been very vocal about it. The Talvex, Vela repeated, her voice cold. They have always been troublemakers. But would they truly risk open conflict by staging false attacks? If they could make it look like humans did it, they wouldn't be risking anything, Hyun pointed out. They'd just be sitting back and watching us fight each other. Taeyang looked at Vela. There's another problem. My supervisor Minho was arrested an hour ago. Station security is claiming he's the leader of a human terrorist group. They say they found evidence in his quarters. What kind of evidence? Vela asked sharply. I don't know. They won't let me see him or the evidence. Taeyang felt frustrated and angry. Minho isn't a terrorist. He's a supervisor who worries too much about paperwork. This is ridiculous. It's part of the same plan, Jisoo said. Frame humans for the attack, then arrest a human authority figure to make it look legitimate. Public opinion is already turning against us. I've been getting reports from other human workers. They're being harassed, questioned, treated like suspects. Vela stood up and began pacing, which Taeyang had learned meant she was thinking hard. After a moment, she stopped and looked at Torin. Begin a quiet investigation. I want to know who has been meeting with whom. Who has been where. Particularly focus on members of my own delegation. You think someone among us is involved? Torin asked, surprised. I think someone is feeding information to our enemies. How else would they know enough to make the attack look convincing? We have a traitor. The word hung in the air like a weight. A traitor among the Valorans was a serious accusation. I'll start immediately, Torin promised. Do it quietly, Vela warned. If the traitor knows we're investigating, they will hide their tracks or accelerate their plans. Over the next 3 days, tension on Nexus Station grew worse. More incidents occurred. Someone sabotaged a water recycling system in the human quarters. Anonymous messages circulated through the station's network, accusing humans of planning more attacks. Several human workers were beaten up in isolated corridors, though no one could identify the attackers. Taeyang continued teaching his classes, but now Valoran guards accompanied him everywhere. Iroh still came to the lessons, but the boy seemed worried and quiet. He understood that something bad was happening, even if he didn't know all the details. During one lesson, Iroh suddenly spoke up. Teacher Taeyang, I heard something. The other students had left early. It was just Taeyang and Iroh in the room. Taeyang set down his datapad and gave the boy his full attention. What did you hear? I was in the corridor outside Commander Doran's quarters. I was waiting for my mother and I got bored, so I was exploring. I heard voices inside Doran's room. They were talking about humans. What were they saying? They were speaking in Old Valoran. Most people don't teach children that language anymore, but my mother made me learn it. Iroh looked uncomfortable. They said the next phase was ready. They said soon there would be too much evidence against humans for anyone to deny. They said the matriarch would have to abandon her human allies. Taeyang's heart raced. Did you recognize the other voice? Who was Doran talking to? I couldn't tell. The walls are thick, but there were at least 2 other people in there with him. This is important, Iroh, very important. We need to tell your mother right away. They found Vela in her private office reviewing reports. When she heard what Iroh had overheard, her expression turned to stone. Doran, she said quietly, I should have seen it sooner. He has always been against working with other species. He believes Valorans should remain isolated and strong. If he's planning another incident, we need to stop him before it happens, Taeyang said. But we have no proof yet. Just a child's report of overheard conversation. In Valoran law, that is not enough to make accusations against a commander. A message appeared on Vela's screen. It was from Toran. The warrior requested an immediate private meeting. Vela gave permission and Toran entered quickly, carrying a secure data device. Matriarch, I have found something, Toran said. I have been monitoring communications as you ordered. I discovered that Commander Doran has been sending encrypted messages off the station. I managed to decode some of them. He connected the device to Vela's display. Everyone gathered around to see. The messages were brief but damning. Doran had been communicating with someone from the Talvex government. They discussed plans to accelerate anti-human sentiment and force the matriarch's hand. He's been working with our enemies, Vela said, her voice filled with cold fury. Betraying his own people for what? Political belief? Pride? There's more, Toran said grimly. According to these messages, another incident is planned for tomorrow. Something bigger than the explosion. They want to make it impossible for you to continue supporting humans. What kind of incident? Taeyang asked. The messages don't specify, but they mention the main power core. Everyone in the room understood immediately. The main power core supplied energy to the entire station. If something happened to it, thousands of lives could be at risk. We have to evacuate the station, Hyun said. There isn't time, Vela replied. Evacuation procedures would take days, and it would cause massive panic. Jisoo looked thoughtful. What if we turn this around? If we know they're planning something, we can catch them in the act. With proof. That's dangerous, Torin warned. If something goes wrong with the power core, people could die. We won't let it go wrong, Taeyang said suddenly. Everyone looked at him. I'm an engineer. I know the power systems better than anyone on this station. If we can figure out what they're planning to do, I can stop it. You would be putting yourself at great risk, Vela said. People are already at risk, and Minho is sitting in a cell for something he didn't do. This is the only way to prove the truth. Vela studied Taeyang for a long moment. Then she nodded. Very well. We will set a trap, Torin. I want you to assign your most trusted warriors to watch Doran and his associates. Track their movements, but do not interfere unless absolutely necessary. Engineer Taeyang, you will monitor the power core. At the first sign of sabotage, you will work to prevent it. What about the station security? Jisoo asked. They should be informed. No, Vela said firmly. We don't know how far this conspiracy reaches. Someone in security might be helping them. We keep this among ourselves. The next day moved slowly. Taeyang positioned himself in the power core monitoring station, which gave him access to all the main systems. Hyun stayed with him, ready to help with any technical work. Velaran warriors watched the entrances to the power core section from hidden positions. Hours passed. Nothing happened. Taeyang began to wonder if they had been wrong. Maybe the conspirators had changed their plans. Then, around 1400 hours, alarms started beeping on Taeyang's console. Someone was accessing maintenance tunnels that led to the power core. The access codes used were legitimate, meaning it was someone with proper authorization. They're coming, Taeyang said quietly into his communicator. We see them, Toran's voice replied. 3 individuals. One is Commander Doran. The others are Velaran technicians assigned to the delegation. Let them get close to the core, Vela's voice said calmly. We need to see exactly what they're doing before we stop them. Taeyang watched his screens as the 3 figures moved through the tunnels. They carried equipment bags. When they reached an access point near the power core, they began setting up something. They're installing a device, Taeyang reported. It looks like, wait, that's a feedback amplifier. If they attach that to the power core and activate it, it will cause a massive energy surge. The entire core could overload. How much damage would that cause? Vela asked. Catastrophic. It would destroy this whole section of the station. Maybe thousands of casualties. And they would blame it on human sabotage, Jisoo added. Probably claim that humans were trying to destroy evidence of their earlier attack. Move in, Vela commanded. Secure them now, but take them alive. I want confessions. Taeyang watched on his monitor as Toran and his warriors emerged from hiding. Doran and his conspirators looked shocked. One tried to reach for a weapon, but the loyal warriors were faster. Within seconds, all 3 were captured. Taeyang quickly went down to the access point and examined the device they had been installing. It was sophisticated, designed to cause maximum damage while looking like an accidental overload. This is definitely Talvek's technology, Taeyang told Vela when she arrived, mixed with some Valoran components to hide its origin. If we hadn't stopped them, this would have worked. Doran glared at them all with pure hatred. You are weak, matriarch. You dishonor our people by allying with these inferior humans. I'd issue the arrest of Commander Doran, and his conspirators should have solved everything. But it didn't. Within hours, the situation on Nexus Station got worse instead of better. Station security released Minho from detention, apologizing for the false accusations. But the damage was already done. Anti-human sentiment had spread too far. Many aliens on the station now believed humans were dangerous. They had seen the explosion, heard the rumors, watched humans being arrested. The fact that it was all a conspiracy didn't matter to them. Fear had taken root. Taeyang sat in the human quarters common area with Hyun, Jisoo, and several other human workers. The mood was tense. People were scared. They're saying we should evacuate, one worker named Kira said. Just leave the station entirely. Go somewhere safer. Where would be safer? Another asked. This is happening everywhere. Humans are being blamed for things we didn't do. Jisoo was reading reports on her datapad, and her expression was grim. It's not just this station. The conspiracy was bigger than we thought. Similar incidents have been reported on 3 other stations and 2 colony worlds, all designed to make humans look dangerous. So what do we do? Hyun asked. Before anyone could answer, Minho entered the room. He looked tired and worn from his time in detention, but his eyes were alert. He had heard the entire story from Jisoo. "We need to make people see the truth," Minho said. "Not just tell them, but show them. The evidence exists. We have Doran in custody. We have the device they tried to use. We have communications proving the Talvek's involvement." "But will anyone listen?" Kira asked. "People believe what they want to believe." Taeyang had been quiet, thinking hard. Now he spoke up. "What if we held a public tribunal, an open presentation where we show all the evidence? Make it impossible to deny. That's risky," Jisoo said. "Public forums can go wrong. If the crowd turns hostile—" "They're already hostile," Taeyang pointed out. "At least this way we have a chance to change their minds." Hyun nodded slowly. "He's right. Hiding won't help. We need to face this directly." Jisoo considered it. "I'd need to get approval from the station administrators. And we'd need security guarantees." "I'll talk to Matriarch Vela," Taeyang said. "If she supports this, it will carry weight." An hour later, Taeyang stood in Vela's office explaining his plan. The matriarch listened carefully, her fingers pressed together in thought. "A public tribunal is dangerous," she said. "Emotions are high. Some species might use it as an excuse to cause trouble. But it's the best chance we have to show the truth," Taeyang argued. "If we do nothing, the lies will spread. Eventually, it won't matter what the truth is." Vela looked at Toran, who had been standing guard by the door. "What do you think?" "The human is correct," Toran said. "This conspiracy was designed to destroy trust. Only truth can rebuild it. But the tribunal must be done properly, with proper security and witnesses from multiple species." Iroh, who had been sitting quietly in the corner, spoke up. "Mother, you always taught me that hiding from challenges is worse than facing them, even if facing them is scary." Vela smiled slightly at her son. "You are wise for your age." She looked back at Taeyang. "Very well. I will support your tribunal. I will also provide Velaran warriors for security. And I will speak on behalf of the evidence we have gathered." Over the next 2 days, preparations were made. The station's main assembly hall was prepared for the tribunal. Representatives from every major species on the station were invited. Station security, under new leadership after the previous corruption was exposed, would maintain order. The night before the tribunal, Taeyang couldn't sleep. He kept going over everything in his mind. What if the evidence wasn't convincing enough? What if people refused to believe? What if this made things worse? There was a knock on his door. When he opened it, Iroh stood there with his mother. "We came to check on you," Iroh said simply. "You look worried." "I am worried," Taeyang admitted. "Tomorrow could go very wrong." Vela entered his small quarters and sat down. For a powerful matriarch, she seemed very comfortable in the simple space. "Let me tell you something about leadership," Vela said. "When I became matriarch, I was young. Younger than many thought appropriate. I had to prove myself worthy. I made mistakes. But I learned that the best leaders are not those who never feel fear. The best leaders are those who feel fear and act anyway." "I'm not a leader," Taeyang said. "I'm just an engineer who wants people to know the truth." "That is exactly what makes you a leader," Vela replied. "True leaders don't seek power. They seek to do what is right even when it's difficult." The next morning, the assembly hall filled with beings from across the galaxy. Taeyang saw Valorans in their ceremonial armor, Talveks in their distinctive robes, and dozens of other species he barely recognized. News crews from multiple networks set up cameras. This wasn't just about Nexus Station anymore. The whole galaxy was watching. Taeyang stood on the main platform with Jisoo beside him. Vela and Toran stood behind them, representing the Valoran support. Hyun was in the technical booth, ready to display evidence on the large screens. The station administrator, an elderly alien from the Corvin species, called the assembly to order. His voice boomed through the hall. "We are here to examine evidence regarding recent attacks on Nexus Station. Engineer Taeyang Kim has requested this forum to present findings. The rules are simple. Evidence will be presented, witnesses will speak, and all present will judge the truth for themselves." Taeyang stepped forward. His hands were shaking slightly, but his voice was steady. 3 weeks ago, an explosion damaged the diplomatic sector. Humans were blamed. Evidence was found that seemed to prove human involvement. My supervisor was arrested. My people were treated as criminals. He paused, looking out at the crowd. But we were innocent. And I'm going to prove it. He nodded to Hyun, who brought up images of the explosion site on the screens. Taeyang walked through his analysis systematically. He showed the burn patterns, the chemical residue, the wiring techniques. He explained each piece in simple terms that anyone could understand. "This is not human work," he said firmly. "It was made to look like human work, but the details are wrong. No human engineer would build a device like this." Murmurs ran through the crowd. Some looked convinced. Others remained skeptical. A Talvex representative stood up. "These are just your opinions, human. You could be lying to protect your people." "Then let me demonstrate," Taeyang said. He had prepared for this. "Bring out the device." Valoran warriors brought in the amplifier that Doran's group had tried to install on the power core. It was now safely deactivated. Taeyang examined it carefully, pointing out specific components. "This power regulator here," he said, pointing to a small component. "It's Talvex technology. The energy signature is unique to Talvex manufacturing. I can prove it." He had brought his own tools. Right there, in front of everyone, he disassembled part of the device and analyzed its components with a portable scanner. The results appeared on the screens for everyone to see. The signature clearly matched Talvex patterns. The Talvex representative went pale. "That proves nothing. Someone could have stolen our technology." "Then explain this," Vela said, stepping forward. She had Torin connect a data drive to the display system. Encrypted messages appeared on the screens, showing communications between Doran and Talvex operatives. The messages discussed plans, timing, even specific details about how to frame humans. These messages were recovered from Commander Doran's secure communications, Vela said. "They proved that Talvex agents worked with traitors in my delegation to create false attacks and blame humans." The hall erupted in shocked conversation. The Talvex delegation tried to protest, but their words were drowned out by angry voices from other species. Taeyang raised his hand, asking for silence. Slowly, the crowd quieted. "I'm not here to start a war between Talvex and everyone else," Taeyang said. "I'm here to show the truth. The truth is that most Talvex probably had nothing to do with this. It was a small group of extremists who feared what would happen if Velerans and humans worked together. They tried to stop it through violence and deception." He looked around the hall, making eye contact with beings from different species. "But here's what they didn't understand about humans. We don't give up when things get hard. We don't hide when we're accused. We face problems directly and solve them. That's what makes us human. We find solutions." An elder from the Corvin species stood up. "You have presented compelling evidence, Engineer Taeyang. But how do we prevent such conspiracies in the future? How do we rebuild trust?" "That's a harder question," Taeyang admitted. "Trust isn't built in a day. It's built through actions over time, through cooperation and understanding, through choosing to see each other as people rather than as threats." Iroh suddenly stood up from where he had been sitting with the Valoran delegation. His small voice carried through the hall. "This human saved my life," Iroh said. "He saved my sister's life. He didn't do it because he wanted something. He did it because it was right. That's who humans are. That's who he is." Toran also stood. "I fought in the battle where human civilians were endangered. I saw Engineer Taeyang risk his own life to save children he didn't even know." That is not the 3 weeks after the tribunal. Life on Nexus Station had changed in ways both small and large. The physical damage from the attacks had been repaired. The conspirators were in custody, awaiting trial under galactic law. But the real changes were in how beings looked at each other now. Taeyang walked through the station's main promenade and noticed the difference immediately. Aliens who once avoided humans now nodded greetings. Some even stopped to chat. The fear and suspicion had not completely disappeared, but it had lessened significantly. Trust was slowly being rebuilt, one interaction at a time. His teaching duties had expanded beyond what he had originally agreed to. Now, instead of just Valoran students, beings from 5 different species attended his classes about human culture and thinking. The room was always full and the discussions were lively. Everyone wanted to understand the humans better. Iroh remained his most dedicated student. The boy came to every class and asked endless questions. He had also started bringing his younger sister Mina, a shy 5-year-old who would sit quietly and draw pictures while Taeyang taught. She had been one of the children trapped on that ship 6 months ago, though she didn't remember much about it. She just knew that the kind human had helped save her. On this particular morning, Taeyang was teaching about human problem-solving methods when his datapad received an urgent message. It was from Matriarch Vela, asking him to come to her office immediately. Taeyang excused himself from class and hurried to the Velaron diplomatic suite. When he arrived, he found not just Vela but also Jisoo and several other officials he didn't recognize. They wore the formal badges of the United Earth government. Engineer Taeyang Kim, one of the officials said, standing to greet him. I am Ambassador Young-Soo Hwang. I've come from Earth with an important proposal. Taeyang felt nervous suddenly. Important proposals from Earth government officials usually meant his life was about to change again. What kind of proposal? He asked carefully. Young-Soo gestured for everyone to sit. The events here on Nexus Station have attracted significant attention on Earth. Your actions specifically. You managed to prevent a major crisis through intelligence, courage, and diplomacy. You also created a model for human-alien cooperation that we believe can be expanded. I just did what needed to be done, Taeyang said, uncomfortable with the praise. Exactly, Young-Soo replied. And that's why we want more people like you. The Earth government is establishing a new program, the Cultural Liaison Initiative. We want to send trained individuals to stations and colonies throughout known space. Their job would be to build bridges between humans and other species just like you've done here. And you want me to train them, Taeyang guessed. We want you to lead the program, Young-Soo corrected. You would return to Earth, establish the training protocols, and prepare the first group of liaisons. It would be a prestigious position with significant authority. Taeyang sat back in his chair, processing this information. Return to Earth, lead a major government program, train others to do what he had been doing. It sounded important. It sounded significant. It also sounded like something he didn't want. Can I think about it? Taeyang asked. Young-Soo looked surprised. Of course. But I should mention, this opportunity may not come again. The government is moving forward with this program regardless. If you decline, they'll find someone else to lead it. After the meeting ended and the Earth officials left, Taeyang sat alone with Vela and Jisoo. You don't want to go, Vela observed. It wasn't a question. I don't know what I want, Taeyang admitted. A few months ago I was just an engineer fixing things. Now I'm being offered positions of leadership and importance. It's all happening so fast. What does your heart tell you? Vela asked. Taeyang thought about it. My heart tells me I'm happy here. I like teaching. I like the students. I like feeling like I'm making a real difference in people's lives. Going to Earth to train others. It feels like I'd just be telling people what to do instead of actually doing it myself. Jisoo nodded understandingly. That's a valid feeling. But you should also consider the impact. If you train 100 liaisons, they'll reach 100 different places. The good you do would multiply. Unless I'm not a good teacher, Taeyang said. Unless I can't really explain what I do because I mostly just do it. I act on instinct, on what feels right. How do you train someone to do that? Vela smiled. You're right to question it. Leadership isn't for everyone. Some people create the most value by staying in the field, doing the work directly. There's no shame in knowing yourself well enough to recognize that. That evening, Taeyang sat in his quarters trying to make a decision. There was a knock on his door. When he opened it, Hyun stood there holding 2 cups of coffee. Thought you might need this, Hyun said, handing him one. Heard about the job offer. Want to talk about it? They sat and talked for over an hour. Hyun listened as Taeyang explained his conflicted feelings. The honor of being chosen, the fear of failing, the desire to stay where he felt useful versus the pull to do something bigger. What would you do? Taeyang finally asked. Me? I'd stay here, Hyun said immediately. But I'm not you. I don't have your talent for connecting with aliens. I'm good with machines, not people. You're good with both. I don't feel good with people. I just try to be honest and helpful. That's exactly what makes you good with people, Hyun pointed out. You don't play games. You don't have hidden agendas. People trust you because you're genuine. Another knock came at the door. This time it was Iroh, followed by Mina holding her brother's hand. We heard you might leave, Iroh said, his voice small and sad. Is it true? Taeyang knelt down to be at eye level with the children. I'm thinking about a job on Earth, but I haven't decided yet. Mina, who rarely spoke, suddenly said something in Valoran. Iroh translated. She says you can't leave. You're her favorite teacher. I'm her only teacher, Taeyang said with a gentle smile. Still her favorite? Iroh insisted. Then the boy's expression became more serious. Mother says that leaders have to make hard choices. She says doing what's right isn't always the same as doing what's easy. She says you'll know what's right because you always do. After the children left, Taeyang sat quietly for a long time. He thought about everything that had happened since he met Iroh in that corridor. The fear that challenges the growth. He thought about the students who came to his classes now eager to learn. He thought about how much more work there was to do here. Building relationships and understanding between species. The next morning, he gave Ambassador Youngsu his answer. "I appreciate the offer," Taeyang said, "but I'm declining the position. I think I can do more good staying here on Nexus Station, continuing the work I've started." Youngsu looked disappointed but not entirely surprised. "That's unfortunate, but I respect your decision. Would you be willing to serve as an advisor to the program, help us develop training materials, review candidate selections, that sort of thing?" "That I can do," Taeyang agreed. "I can share what I've learned, but the actual training and leadership should be done by someone who wants that role." "Fair enough." Youngsu shook his hand. "For what it's worth, I think you're making the right choice. The galaxy needs people in the field doing the real work. Not everyone has to be an administrator." After the ambassador left, Taeyang felt a weight lift from his shoulders. He had made his choice and it felt right. Later that day, there was a ceremony in the main hall. Nexus Station was formally acknowledging the individuals who had helped resolve the conspiracy. Taeyang, Hyun Jisoo, Minho, Toran, and even young Iroh all received commendations for their roles. But the most important moment came when Matriarch Vela addressed the assembled crowd. "These recent events have taught us valuable lessons," Vela said, her voice carrying through the hall. "We learned that fear and prejudice can be weaponized by those who seek to divide us. But we also learned something more important. We learned that courage, truth, and cooperation can overcome even the darkest conspiracies." She gestured toward Taeyang. "This human showed us what his species is truly capable of, not through military might or political maneuvering, but through simple dedication to doing what is right. He protected those who needed protection. He sought truth when lies surrounded us. He built bridges when others tried to build walls." Vela paused, looking out at the crowd that included beings from dozens of species. "The question we must all ask ourselves is this: what kind of galaxy do we want to live in? One where we fear each other and stay isolated? Or one where we reach across the void between our worlds and find common ground? I know which future I choose, and I believe after these events many of you have made the same choice." The hall erupted in applause, not just from Velerans or humans, but from representatives of many species. It wasn't universal agreement, but it was a start. That evening, as Taeyang prepared for bed, his datapad showed a personal message from Vela. It was brief but meaningful. "You have honored the life debt between us many times over, but more than that, you have become a friend to my family and my people. Whatever path you walk, know that you will always have the support and respect of the Valoran Third Fleet. You are not just a liaison or a teacher. You are a bridge builder, and the galaxy needs more like you." Taeyang smiled as he read it.